I started out as a PA and became production manager and became a fairly well-respected line producer. Sometime, I guess, in the late 80s, they started hiring line producers. Before that, it was just a production manager and a creative producer, and they are basically useless once they get the money and the actors, right? And so directors started feeling that nobody was fighting for their cause on a production, and so they hired a whole new class of line producers came in.
Out of all the films that you did with Rob Reiner, was there one that you are the most proud of? Because you had done A Few Good Men, Misery, Stand By Me, Princess Bride, I think even When Harry Met Sally.
Well, just like Caroline said, how do you feel to have worked on, the greatest iconic movie? Yeah. When people come up to me and say, "You worked on my favorite movie," I know what exactly it always is. It's The Princess Bride. And The Princess Bride was an absolutely wonderful adventure. You got to remember that was done before computers. So there's one glass painting in there, and everything else, all the skies are painted skies on the sets. There's no computer work. There's no CGI work in that at all. All the sword fighting was done straight up real. Just the flips were done with doubles. Otherwise, Mandy and Carrie did it all, and that was a movie that was made for about $14 million.
Wow. And today you would think that would be like $100 million epic.
Easily.
With CGI and everything else, but it really shows the craftsmanship of wardrobe department, production design, everything coming together.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, with Rob, we always, after the first one, The Sure Thing, we always said we want to cast the crew as well as the cast. We want a team that will fit, that will be responsible for each other.
How do you balance between the sort of creative desires of a director and the sort of the practical production management in terms of, we have this location for a certain number of hours, we only have, the sun's only out for a certain amount of time, we really have to get going, versus, they really want this shot, or they really want something that's going to desire them creatively and make the film better? Well,
when I was learning how it all works, the pressure was always about money. Come on, we got to get out of here. This is taking way too much time. As I got into films, I learned something that I think is really, really smart, and that was that a mediocre movie that comes in on budget is a failure. And that I have a good talent for scheduling. I have a good talent for leading a team. I was a jock when I was in high school. I liked being on teams. And so I've always said to everybody through my actions mostly that if it's really important, I'll do everything I can to get it for you, And if it's, I don't think it's that important, but you still do, then I'll sit down and we'll talk about it, and then we'll maybe find a way to compromise. Making films is a how to say this, is a very complicated process, and so you can do it in any number of ways. You could shoot this for the Sultan of Bahrain's a wedding party, and when you run out of light, you go up against that wall and shoot some guy stepping out of the shower and saying, "Is dinner ready yet?" and so my goal has been really pretty much since I started with Rob is that the goal is excellence, and that's why Norman there thought 60-day schedule and Stand By Me was a little too much money, even though that movie cost $7 million to make. But I told him, Norman, these are 11-year-old kids. We're out of business with them at 8.5 hours, and that includes the travel time. So we're not going to get full days. So let's bite the bullet now, because again, a mediocre film on budget is a failure.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, Norman got cold feet at the end and sold Stand By Me to Columbia for the $7 million plus $1 million that he took as profit, and the thing went on to make something like $60 or $70 million.
People forget that was an independent film at the time. I believe it was even nominated for an Independent Spirit Award.
I don't remember that, but it was definitely an independent, And that, see, I was also lucky because I got into it in the 70s and went through the 80s, and had my reputation and my power by the time the 90s came, which is when the corporation started buying movie studios, and when the decisions were corporate decisions, the people were corporate people. When you're making a movie and in walks Norman Lear, who is the producer, that's like, you're making a movie and in walks Louis B. Mayer or something like that. And it just isn't like that anymore.
That's what made Boyz N The Hood so revolutionary. A story in that world, in, an all-black cast, set in South Central Los Angeles, was really not something seen from a studio level movie.
And that's why there's only one producer on it too. When it came out, or when it got accepted at Cannes, 3 or 4 other people tried to climb on as producers. But they didn't get it. Misery was aptly titled. My son was going from 6th grade to 7th grade, so I really kind of wanted to spend the summer with him. So we, as a family, we went back to Boston. He wanted to go to the Basketball Hall of Fame. And Stephanie Elaine, my friend, who was she was the development person at Columbia, one of 6 or 7 there. She said, "I just read the greatest script I've ever read in my life. You have to do this." And I said, I want the summer off. I'm tired. That Misery was a horrible, horrible, long job. And but to get her off the phone, I said, "Okay, just FedEx it to me." So I got it in 2 days. I sat down. My test is if I read it in one sitting, then it's worth thinking about. And I'm a hippie. I'm from the 60s. Social justice is very important to me. And the script for Boyz N The Hood just really hit me right there in my heart. And so I said to Aaron, my son, I said, "Well, I'm going to probably take this job." And he said, "Good, do it." He was at that point where he knew more about NWA than I did. I never even heard of NWA. And he kind of brought me into the rap world. So anyway, I met John. John was 20 years old, I think. His mom lived in Pasadena, and I did too, so we met at his mom's house. And I said, "Why me?" And he said, "Because you made my favorite film of all time, Stand By Me." And I said, "Okay." And I think we can work. And it's funny because when I was working on A Few Good Men at Boyz N The Hood had come out, and Rob Reiner asked me one day in a maxi van, we were on a location scout, about why did Doughboy fade away like we did in Stand By Me when Chris goes away. And I said, it was an homage to Stand By Me, man. I mean, the fat kid wears a striped shirt in it too. He missed that one. I remember in the late 80s, early 90s, I'd love to watch the Channel 5 10 o'clock Sunday night news. And I called it the murder news because it was a roundup of all the Crips and Bloods and shootings, and it was an hour devoted to South Central's bleeding, and and everybody didn't say it this way, but this is what they were thinking. Why are they killing themselves? What's going on? Well, who gets what out of any of that stuff? After Boyz N The Hood came out, that stereotype was over. That was Ricky Baker dying in the alley, and that was a doughboy cruising the streets looking to do the job that the cops don't do down there. And all of a sudden, a whole stereotypical, unwanted, nobody even thought about what life was like down there. That part of the world turned into real human beings, and it's what films don't do enough of anymore. They don't have heart, and they don't try to teach. And we're in a world today where we have so much opulence, so much opportunity, and the one thing we don't have is the ability to get along with anybody, because we all think everybody else is fucking nuts. And we learn emotionally through the stories that we tell. It's very, very important. People say, "Oh, you worked in television. Now you worked in movies. What did you really do?" But if you do it with all your heart and you strive for excellency and you get really lucky and work on good projects, you've done a lot for the overall general health of the community.
Yeah.
And that's what was incredible about Boyz N The Hood as well, is that John Singleton wrote that from his point of view, and really about him growing. I believe in Lawrence Fishburne that the character really was based on his father.
Furious, absolutely.
Growing up. And
yeah, Danny. Yeah.
So it really brought a humanist point of view to an area that was just sort of stereotypes completely.
Have you heard the story about Peavy's Playhouse?
I believe John Singleton was a PA.
He was the door guard on that, and Larry played Cowboy Curtis, and so Larry tells the story. This guy says, this kid who couldn't have weighed more than 40 pounds and had the geekiest looking thing, he says, "I'm going to write a movie and you're going to be in it one day." And sure enough, and it's pretty. I could tell you Boyz N The Hood stories forever. Day one, first day of casting, right? Larry comes with us, and we go to Jackie Brown's office. The second guy in the door is Cuba Gooding Jr., and the third guy in the door is Morris Chestnut. So I said, "Well, we got Trey and Ricky. Should we just go have lunch now?"
And that was, I think, the first leading role that Cuba Gooding Jr. really ever had.
Oh, Cuba, Nia, what's her name? Who played the mom? I can't remember her name now. Morris, Ice Cube, a lot of people, including Larry. Larry had been in, I think, an Arnold Schwarzenegger movie, but had never had,
briefly in Apocalypse Now.
Well, yeah, when he was like 14 or whatever he was. Yeah. So that movie, there have been several movies where a lot of people have come out of them, but that was certainly one of them.
Yeah.
And that was all shot on location, really, for the most part?
Yep.
Was any studio work done on that? Any sets built? Or that was really...
I had been prepping Rain Man before it fell apart. Marty Brest was going to direct it. And our offices were next door to the offices where they were prepping Colors, the Sean Penn LAPD movie.
Oh, Dennis Hopper.
Dennis Hopper's, yeah, Colors. And so I would go there and I would walk by their art department and see, the fancy murals that are going to tell the story of this hood and all that. And I said, I hate that when Hollywood goes to the ghetto and then brightens it up. So we intentionally, and I really did this. We hired Bruce Bellamy to be the art director. Bruce had been literally a set dresser once on a show, but he was John's friend. And so we found all the locations. We shot all on location, and that's how it felt real. I mean, there when it first came out, people said, "Was that a documentary?"
Because it has such a great sense of location, a great sense of place. And,
it does.
And I believe John Singleton was the youngest director and also the first black director ever to be nominated for an Academy Award.
Correct on both things.
What do you think has been the proudest moment of your career?
Meeting Caroline. No, I'll tell you, the proudest moment in my life, other than the birth of my kids, we were in Cannes. We were not in competition on Boyz N The Hood, but in the audience was Spike Lee, Quincy Jones, all of the great black actors of their day. I was sitting next to Frank Price, who was head of the studio at the time. Right behind us was Roger Ebert and his black wife. I don't think they were married at the time, though.
Chaz, I think.
Yeah. And we had tested the movie a couple of times in L.A. We knew it was going to play. We weren't quite sure how it was going to play in French subtitles. So the lights go down, the movie plays out. The movie's over, the lights come up. I look up. People are hanging off of the balcony trying to get John's attention to say how great it was. The whole, Mount Rushmore of black artists and filmmakers is on their feet doing that. I turned around. Roger Ebert is crying his eyes out. It was one of those.